Comenius, the Gate of Languages Unlocked, brought to you by Latinum. Latinum is a Latin language audio course provider with an enormous catalogue of audio materials to help you learn Latin. And you can find Latinum at Patreon. Chapter 15 of the Janua Linguarum Reserata of John Amos Comenius, in English and Latin. Animalia in genere, living creatures in general. Et in specie rudiora, and in particular the more imperfect ones. Palpitantia, the ones that pant. Repentia, crawl. Serpentia, creep. Quod est praetitum vitae, that which is imbued with life, sensu, sense, et libero motu, and free motion, est animal, is a living creature. Vitam accipiunt nascendo, they receive life in being born. Continuant nutricando, they continue it in being nourished. Propagant sui simile generando, they propagate it by begetting their like, ones that are like them, giving birth to ones that are like them. Idioque sexu discreta sunt, and to that end they are differenced by way of sex. Sensum exercent, they exercise their sense. Potissimum alimenti causa, especially for the sake of foods. Tangendo, by touching. Olfaciendo, by smelling. Gustando, by tasting. Audiendo, by hearing. Videndo, by seeing. Motum adhibent, they use motion. Ad prosequendum bonum et fugiendum malum, for seeking good, as he puts in the Old English here, their prosecution of good, and fleeing or avoiding evil. Alata volando, those that have wings by way of flying. Pinata natando, those that have fins by way of swimming. Pedata gradiendo, those that have feet by way of going. Quando animal se non movet, when a living creature moveth not itself, when it does not move, when it stirs not. Tum aut cubat, then it either lies down. Prostratis membris, its limbs being laid along or flat, prostrate, as we'd say. Aut sedet, or it sits. Substratis inferioribus, the lower or hinder parts being laid underneath. Arectisque superioribus, and the upper part, the foreparts, are lifted up. In other words, he's describing the act of sitting. Aut stat totum erectum, or it stands all on end, in other words, straight upright. Super pedes suos se equilibrans, counterpoising itself on its feet, in other words, balancing itself on its feet. Aut fulcimento aliqui, conitens, or leaning on some kind of prop. Quaedam tamen animalcula, yet some little living creatures, promovent se, palpitando dun taxat, move themselves forward only by panting, aut rependo, or by crawling, vel serpendo, or creeping, in other words, sliding on their belly. Cum sint veluti rudimenta animalis generis, whereas, or seeing that they are, as it were, the rough drafts of the living kind, ut conca, as shellfish, vermiculi, little worms, serpentes, serpents. Conca, a shellfish, inclusa conchis stestaceis, shut up inside houses of shells, quibus caro exsanguis, et viscosa actissime adhaeret, to which the flesh, being bloodless and slimy, viscosa, doth most closely stick or cling. In other words, it sticks very closely to the shell. Dimovet se paulatim sub aquis levi palpitatione, removeth itself, it moves itself by little and little under the waters, by a slight panting. Quarum aprime sunt ostria succulenta, and of which the chief are the juicy oyster. Conca, margaritifera, and the pearl-bearing shellfish, margaritifera, my apologies. Et purpura, and the purple fish, purpureum succum emovens, casting up a purple-colored juice. Tardigrada cochlea, circumfert secum testaceam suam domunculam. The slow-paced cockle, that's a snail, carrieth about with its shelly lodge. So it goes about itself with its little roof of its little house. Putatur carere oculis, it is thought to lack eyes. Sicut et limax, as also the dew snail, in other words, the slug. Sed habent cornicula, but they have little horns, quibus praetentant iter, wherewith they grope out their way. And I do believe that there are little eyes on the ends of those little horns. Vermes reput commolutione et evolutione corpusculi. Worms crawl, they trail along, by the rolling up and down, the wriggling to and fro of their body. E quibus rebus gignuntur, and out of the same thing whereof they are bred, existem quaerentes nutrimentum, they there get their nourishment from the same thing. Erodunt eas, they gnaw on them. Acari, caram, the mites, on wax. Termites carnem, the maggots, on flesh. Teneae vestes, the moths, on garments, clothes. Blatae libros, bookworms, on books. Teredines, cossi, ligna, timber worms, that's wood lice, on wood. Lumbrici, uidam terram, earthworms on moist or wet or oozy ground. Volvoces con volvuli, vitem, whirlworms, that's the devil's gold ring, or caterpillars, on vines. Curculones, frumenta, weevils, or in Old English bauds, on corn. Crucae, plantas, cankerworms on plants. Bombices, morifolia, silkworms on mulberry leaves, et caetera, etc. Sed insecta sunt expeditiora, but insects, small vermin, are more nimble, they are quicker. Quibus dati pediculi, which have little feet given to them. Pedunculus, a little foot. Lentium progenitor. Lendium progenitor, as the louse, the begetter of nits. Pulex saltator, the flea, a skipper. Ricinus canibus infestus, the tick, troublesome to dogs. Cimex parietum et cubilium, praesertim abiegnorum, graveolens per reptator, and that puny wall louse, the scurvy-smelling creeper, through of walls and lodgings, especially those that are made of deal boards. That's the cheap kind of wood. This is the rather horrible bed bug. Oniscus, the lope or blind beetle, ad haerens humescentibus muris, sticking to moist walls. Et scolopendra, and the furry bear worm. Dicta centipes, et millipeda, a pedum multitudine, called 100 legs or 40-foot by reason of its many feet. Formicae, finally, denique, finally, formicae, ants. Cerca victum comportandum semper actuosae, always busy staring about, carrying or hoarding provision. Et araneae, and spiders. Tenuissima arania nectentes, weaving or knitting most thin cobwebs. Quibus muscis incidentur, in which they lie in wait for flies. Serpentes, the serpents or crawlers. Oblongum corpus adepti, having got a very long body. Serpunt arcuata ejustem corporis sinuatione. They creep on the belly by an arched or crooked winding or writhing of the same body. Ut sunt, as are, anguis communis, the common snake. Coluber sylvaticus, the wood snake. Natrix aquatica, the water snake. Aspis venenosissima, the most venomous asp, the adder in other words. Iaculus vibrans sese ex arboribus in obios, the dart snake, throwing himself upon passengers from trees. Vipera quae sola parit catulos vivos, the viper, which alone brings forth live young. Amphisbaina item, also the two-headed serpent. Poro ac retrogradiens, which goeth forward and backward. Et basiliscus, and the cockatrice. Tam nocius, so hurtful, or mischievous, or baneful. Ut solo visu necet, that it kills only with its look. Draco, the dragon. Denique alatus serpens, a winged serpent. And the last two, or the last three actually, do not exist in this world, but maybe they do exist in some parallel universe, and they pop into our universe from time to time, and we see them. But they do not exist in our dimension. Solent serpentibus ad numerari, they used to be reckoned among serpents, as he says here. Tametsi sint greciles, although they are such as go step by step. Lacerta, the lizard, habens lacertosos pedes, that has brawny feet. Seps, the evet, huica consimilis, somewhat like this. Sed minor, but less. Stelio, maculis areolis picturatus, the swift newt pictured with golden spots or specks. Salamandra, and the salamander. Tam frigida, so cold. Ut extinguat ignem, that it quenches or puts out fire. Scorpio denique, to conclude, the scorpion. Flexuosa cauda infligens letiferos ictus, with its bending or crooked tail, giving deadly strokes, a deadly hit, a deadly strike. And that's the end of the chapter from Comenius. You can find more of my work at Patreon. At Patreon I host all my audio material, and I've been recording Latin audio courses and audio books since 2006. There's an enormous catalogue there, so if you subscribe at Patreon you get access to all of my audio books. Some are in Latin only, some are read Latin, English, Latin, and there's also a complete Latin course which will take you from the beginning right through to advanced level. In fact, there's more than one Latin course, because I have recorded several Latin courses over the years in the belief that it is useful to approach the language through more than one author, because each author approaches the language slightly differently and you learn differently from each author. So have a look at Patreon, Latinum, and you can also see the website latinum.org.uk. I hope you enjoyed this little reading from Comenius.